Now she was the doctor everyone listened to, because she'd built something too important, too successful, too revolutionary to ignore. Callum had given her a second chance at making a difference. She intended to make it count. The code, blue alarm, shattered the usual rhythm of the ICU at 3:47 a.m., and nobody even glanced at Rosalind Chen. Crash cart to room 412. Code blue, room 412. The night shift erupted into controlled chaos. Dr. Harrison Wickham, the attending physician, sprinted past Rosalind's station without so much as acknowledging her presence. Nurses scattered like birds, some running toward room 412, others clearing the hallway, all of them moving with practiced urgency. Rosalind stood up from her chair at the nurse's station, her hand instinctively reaching for her stethoscope. But Dr. Wickham's voice cut through the commotion before she could take a step. "Chen, stay at your post. Monitor the other patients. We've got this." It wasn't a request. It was a dismissal. Rosalind sank back into her chair, watching through the glass walls as the code team swarmed into room 412. She could see flashes of movement, doctors, nurses, respiratory therapists, all converging on the patient whose heart monitor had gone flatline. The patient in 412 was Callum Thornburg. The Callum Thornburg, tech billionaire venture capitalist, philanthropist, and according to the breathless news coverage that had dominated every screen for the past 3 days, currently dying of a mysterious illness that had baffled specialists at 3 different hospitals. His admission to Sacred Heart Hospital had been a media circus. News vans camped outside, reporters shouting questions, hospital administration falling over themselves to accommodate the man whose net worth exceeded some small country's GDPs. And now he was coding. Through the glass, Rosalind watched Dr. Wickham take charge. She could read his lips, start compressions. "Someone bag him. I need an amp of Epistat." The crash cart was in motion. Hands moved with precision. Equipment beeped and hissed. And Rosalind sat at her station, exactly where she'd been told to stay, doing exactly what she'd been told to do. Monitor the other patients. She pulled up the charts on her computer screen, checking vitals with mechanical efficiency. Mrs. Gutierrez in 408, stable. Mr. Okafor in 410, sleeping peacefully. Ms. Yang in 414, oxygen saturation good. Heart rate normal. Everyone was fine. Everyone except the billionaire whose heart had stopped. Rosalind's eyes drifted back to room 412. They'd shocked him once, twice. She saw Dr. Wickham's face. Intense, focused, slightly desperate. This was the kind of patient who could make or break a career. Save Callum Thornburg, and you'd be a hero. Lose him, and you'd be the doctor who let a billionaire die on your watch. 3 shocks, 4. Rosalind's fingers drummed against her desk. She bit her lip, watching, saying nothing, still in V-fib. She heard someone shout from inside the room. Another shock. The billionaire's body jerked on the bed like a puppet with cut strings. Rosalind glanced at the clock. They'd been coding him for 4 minutes. Standard protocol said they had time. Brain death didn't typically occur until 6 to 10 minutes without oxygen. They could keep trying. They would keep trying. This was Callum Thornburg. They'd try for an hour if they had to. But Rosalind knew something they didn't. She'd tried to tell them. 3 times over the past 2 days since Thornburg's admission. 3 times she'd approached Dr. Wickham with her concerns. 3 times she'd been dismissed. "Chen, I don't have time for speculation from a floor nurse. Chen, Mr. Thornburg is being treated by the best specialists in the country. I think they know what they're doing. Chen, please focus on your assigned duties and leave the diagnostic work to the doctors." She'd even gone to the head nurse, Patricia Montenegro, with her observations. Patricia had been slightly more polite, but equally dismissive. Rosalind, I understand you want to be helpful, but Mr. Thornburg has a team of 15 specialists consulting on his case. Unless you've suddenly acquired multiple medical degrees I don't know about, I think we should let the experts handle this. So, Rosalind had backed off, returned to her post, monitored her patients, kept her mouth shut, and now the billionaire was dying. 5 shocks. 6. She could see the team's movements becoming more frantic, less coordinated. Desperation was setting in. Time check! Dr. Wickham's voice carried through the open door. 7 minutes, Doctor. 7 minutes of compressions. 7 minutes of no pulse, no rhythm, no spontaneous heartbeat. The window for successful resuscitation was closing fast. Rosalind stood up. Her hand trembled slightly as she reached for her ID badge. She could stay here. She could follow orders. She could let whatever was going to happen, or she could try one more time. She walked toward room 412, her sensible shoes squeaking slightly on the polished floor. Through the glass, she could see Dr. Wickham's face slick with sweat, his expensive tie loosened, his usual composure cracking under pressure. Another round of epi. Come on, come on! Rosalind reached the doorway. A junior nurse, Brittany, fresh out of nursing school, was standing just inside, holding supplies, her face pale with the kind of fear that comes from watching someone die despite your best efforts. "Excuse me," Rosalind said quietly. Brittany didn't move, didn't even seem to hear her. "Excuse me," Rosalind said louder. Dr. Wickham's head snapped toward her. "Chen, I told you to stay at your station." "Doctor, I need to—" "Not now. Get back to your post before I write you up." "Doctor, it's his pacemaker." The room went quiet for a fraction of a second. Even the compressions paused. Every head turned toward Rosalind. "What?" Dr. Wickham's voice was dangerous. "It's his pacemaker," Rosalind repeated, forcing her voice to stay steady. "It's malfunctioning. That's why he's not responding to the shocks. The pacemaker is interfering with the defibrillation. Mr. Thornburg doesn't have a pacemaker," Dr. Wickham said slowly, like he was speaking to a child. "It's not in his chart." "It's not in this chart," Rosalind said. "But it's in his records from Mercy General. From 3 years ago, he had a cardiac episode during a marathon, and they implanted an ICD, an implantable cardioverter defibrillator. It's a combination pacemaker and internal defibrillator. I saw it when I reviewed his transferred records yesterday." "That's not," Dr. Wickham started, but another doctor, younger, less invested in hierarchy, grabbed Thornburg's wrist and felt along the chest wall. "She's right," he said, his voice shocked. "There's a device here. Left pectoral region. I can feel the outline." Dr. Wickham's face went through several colors. "Why the hell isn't that in the admission chart?" "Transfer error," Rosalind said. "The records from Mercy General were scanned incorrectly. Page 12 was duplicated, and page 13, the one with the device information, was skipped. I noticed it yesterday and flagged it for correction, but the update hasn't been entered yet." 8 minutes, someone called out. Dr. Wickham made a decision. "If the ICD is malfunctioning and interfering with external defibrillation, we need to put a magnet over it," Rosalind interrupted, "to temporarily disable it. Then we can shock him normally." "We don't have a—" "I do." Rosalind pulled a small cylindrical magnet from her pocket. "I brought it from the equipment room after I flagged the chart discrepancy. In case something like this happened. She'd been carrying it for 2 days, just in case. Even though no one had listened to her concerns. Even though she'd been told repeatedly to mind her own business." Dr. Wickham stared at her for a long moment. Then he stepped back from the bed. "Place the magnet. Now." Rosalind moved quickly, positioning the magnet over Thornburg's left chest, where she could feel the outline of the implanted device. The pacemaker's magnetic sensor would detect it and switch to a synchronous mode, effectively pausing its function. "Clear for defibrillation," she said, stepping back. "Charging to 200 joules." The defibrillator whined as it powered up. Everyone stepped away from the bed. "Clear." The shock delivered. Thornburg's body jerked. The heart monitor beeped once, twice, then settled into a rhythm. "We've got sinus rhythm," the younger doctor shouted. "He's back!" The room erupted in controlled celebration, the kind of restrained joy that comes from snatching someone back from death's door. Hands were shaken. Backs were patted. Someone laughed with relief. Dr. Wickham looked at the monitor, then at Rosalind. His expression was complicated. Gratitude mixed with embarrassment, mixed with something that looked like resentment. "Good catch, Chen," he said finally. "Very good catch. It wasn't an apology. It wasn't even really a thank you. But it was acknowledgement, which was more than she usually got. Just doing my job." "And Doctor," Rosalind said quietly. She turned and walked back to her station, leaving the code team to stabilize their now living patient. As she sat down at her computer, she noticed her hands were shaking. Adrenaline, probably. Or maybe just the emotional toll of watching someone nearly die, because nobody would listen. The rest of the night shift passed without incident. Thornburg stabilized. The specialists were called. The pacemaker malfunction was documented. And slowly, gradually, word spread through the hospital about the floor nurse who'd saved the billionaire's life. By the time Rosalind's shift ended at 7 a.m., she was exhausted. Not just physically, but emotionally. She gathered her things, clocked out, and headed for the parking garage. She'd almost reached her car when she heard footsteps behind her. "Nurse Chen? Rosalind Chen." She turned. A man in an expensive suit, definitely not hospital staff, was approaching with purposeful strides. Behind him, 2 more suits. Security, probably. Or lawyers. When you were worth billions, you apparently traveled with an entourage. "Yes? My name is Felix Carrington. I'm Mr. Thornburg's chief of staff. He'd like to speak with you. Mr. Thornburg is sedated. He shouldn't be speaking to anyone, not now, when he's recovered. He wanted me to find you, to express his gratitude, and to ensure we have your contact information." Rosalind felt uncomfortable. "That's not necessary. I was just doing my job." Nevertheless, Mr. Thornburg is very particular about expressing his appreciation to those who help him. Please. Felix held out a business card. "If you could just provide your contact information, we'll arrange a proper meeting once he's discharged." Something about the whole situation felt off. Too formal. Too intense. But Rosalind took the card and provided her email address, figuring it was easier than arguing. "Thank you," Felix said. "Mr. Thornburg will be in touch." He left with his security detail, and Rosalind finally got into her car. As she drove home through the early morning traffic, she couldn't shake the feeling that something significant had just happened. She just had no idea how significant it would turn out to be. 3 days later, Rosalind was back on the night shift, monitoring the same ICU floor, sitting at the same nurse's station. Callum Thornburg had been moved to a private suite on the hospital's VIP floor, the kind of room that looked more like a luxury hotel than a medical facility. She'd heard the gossip, of course. The entire hospital was buzzing with talk about the billionaire's mysterious illness, his dramatic code blue, and the night nurse who'd saved his life. Some of the gossip was flattering. "Did you hear? That quiet nurse from the ICU figured out what all the specialists missed." Some of it was less so. "I heard she was just lucky. Happened to catch a clerical error. Right place, right time." And some of it was openly hostile. "Chen always acts like she knows more than the doctors. This just feeds her ego." Rosalind ignored it all. She'd learned years ago that hospital politics were unavoidable, and the best strategy was to keep your head down and do your job. Let the gossips gossip. Let the resentful resent. She knew what she'd done and why, and that was enough. Dr. Wickham had been notably absent since the code. Rumor was he'd been called into a meeting with hospital administration about the chart error. Whether he'd face any consequences remained to be seen, but Rosalind doubted it. Doctors rarely faced serious repercussions for mistakes, especially not when the patient survived. It was 2 a.m. when Patricia Montenegro appeared at the nurse's station, looking uncharacteristically flustered. "Rosalind, you need to come with me. What's wrong? Is it one of my patients?" "No, it's... Just come." Now, Patricia's tone was urgent enough that Rosalind didn't argue. She followed the head nurse through the maze of corridors, away from the ICU toward the hospital's executive wing. They stopped outside a conference room that Rosalind had only seen from a distance, the kind of space reserved for board meetings and VIP consultations. "What's going on?" Rosalind asked. "Mr. Thornburg wants to meet with you. He's been asking for you for 2 days, but administration wanted to wait until he was stronger. Apparently he insisted tonight, at 2 a.m. He's a billionaire. He's used to getting what he wants, when he wants it." Patricia opened the door. The conference room had been transformed into something resembling a mobile office. Laptops, phones, several people in business attire despite the hour. And in the center of it all, sitting in a wheelchair, because he wasn't cleared to walk yet, was Callum Thornburg. He looked better than the last time Rosalind had seen him, which admittedly wasn't hard, given that he'd been clinically dead. His color was good, his eyes were alert, and despite the IV line still attached to his arm, he radiated the kind of presence that came from decades of commanding rooms full of powerful people. "Nurse Chen," he said, his voice stronger than she expected. "Thank you for coming. Please sit." Rosalind sat in one of the conference room chairs, feeling distinctly out of place. Patricia remained standing near the door, watching with an unreadable expression. "Mr. Thornburg, you should be resting. My doctors cleared this meeting. Reluctantly, but they cleared it." Thornburg leaned forward slightly. "I wanted to thank you personally. Felix tells me you've been avoiding his attempts to contact you. I've been working. I don't check my personal email often. Avoiding or not, you're here now. So let me say it directly. You saved my life. According to the medical team, I would have died if you hadn't identified the pacemaker issue. I was just paying attention to your medical history. Any nurse should have caught it, but they didn't. You did." "Why?" The question was more complicated than it seemed. Rosalind chose her words carefully. "I read all my patients' charts thoroughly, including transferred records. It's part of being thorough. And you noticed a missing page?" "I noticed the page numbers didn't sequence correctly. 11, 12, 12 again, 14. So I contacted the records department to request the original files from Mercy General. When I saw page 13 was missing, I reviewed it separately. That's when I found the ICD documentation." Thornburg nodded slowly. "And then you tried to inform the medical team?" 3 times. They weren't interested in input from a floor nurse. Dr. Wickham dismissed you. It wasn't a question. Thornburg had clearly gotten the full story from someone. Dr. Wickham had a lot on his mind. "You're a high-profile patient. The pressure was significant. That's generous of you. Most people would be bitter about being ignored when they were right." Rosalind shrugged. "Being right doesn't matter if the patient dies. I'm just glad you're alive." Thornburg studied her for a long moment. "Felix did some research on you. I hope you don't mind. I like to know about the people who impact my life." Rosalind felt a chill. "What kind of research?" "Nothing invasive. Just publicly available information." "You've been a nurse for 12 years. Worked at Sacred Heart for 7. Before that, Presbyterian hospital across town. Excellent performance reviews. Multiple commendations for patient care. No disciplinary issues. You're also putting yourself through medical school. Online program, part-time, should finish in another 3 years. Yes, that's accurate. Why medical school? You're clearly good at nursing. I want to be able to do more. To have more autonomy in patient care. To be taken seriously when I identify problems. Thornburg smiled slightly. So you do resent being dismissed. I resent the hierarchy that values credentials over competence. But that's how the system works. If I want to change my position within it, I need to change my credentials. Smart, pragmatic. I respect that. Thornburg gestured to one of his assistants who handed him a folder. Which brings me to why I asked you here. I'd like to offer you something. Mr. Thornburg, I don't need a reward. It's not a reward. It's an opportunity. I'm funding a new medical research facility, Thornburg Advanced Care Institute. It's going to be state-of-the-art, focused on diagnostic medicine and complex cases. The kind of place where thoroughness is valued over hierarchy, where nurses, doctors, technicians, everyone is empowered to speak up when they notice something others miss. He slid the folder across the table. I'd like you to be the head of nursing there. You'd help design the protocols, hire the staff, create the culture. It would also include a full scholarship to complete your medical degree, traditional program, full-time if you want, top-tier school. When you graduate, you transition to a physician role within the institute. Rosalind stared at the folder. That's an incredibly generous offer. It's a job offer. I need good people. You're clearly good people. I barely know anything about you. You barely know me. This seems impulsive? Maybe, but I didn't get where I am by overthinking good decisions. You saved my life because you were thorough, persistent, and willing to speak up, even when no one wanted to listen. Those are the exact qualities I need in leadership. So yes, I'm making you an offer after one meeting. You can say no, but I hope you won't. Rosalind opened the folder. The salary number made her eyes widen. The benefits package was even more staggering. Full health insurance, housing stipend, research budget, complete tuition coverage. It was the offer of a lifetime. Can I think about it? She asked. Of course. Take a week. Talk to whoever you need to talk to. The contact information is in the folder. When you're ready, call Felix. Thank you, Mr. Thornburg. Call me Callum. If you're going to work for me, we should be on a first-name basis. Rosalind left the conference room in a daze, Patricia trailing behind her. What just happened? Patricia asked once they were in the hallway. I think I just got offered my dream job. Are you going to take it? I don't know. It seems too good to be true. There has to be a catch. The catch is probably that you'll be working for a demanding billionaire with impossibly high standards. But Rosalind, you saved his life. He's grateful. And people like Callum Thornburg don't forget debts. This could change everything for you. I know. That's what scares me. She returned to her station and tried to focus on work, but her mind kept drifting to the folder in her bag, to the possibilities it represented, to the life she could have if she said yes, but she'd learned to be cautious, to question things that seemed too perfect, because in her experience, perfection always came with a price. The question was, what would this particular perfection cost her? Rosalind didn't sleep after her shift ended. She went home to her small apartment, a one-bedroom in a neighborhood that was up-and-coming, which meant not quite safe but affordable, and sat at her kitchen table with the folder open in front of her. The Thornburg Advanced Care Institute. She Googled it and found construction photos, architectural renderings, press releases. It was real. A massive facility being built in the medical district, scheduled to open in 18 months. The mission statement talked about revolutionizing diagnostic medicine and empowering clinical staff at all levels. It sounded too good to be true. She called her best friend Deepa Malhotra, a physician's assistant at a children's hospital. "A billionaire offered you a job at 2 a.m.? Deepa said skeptically. "That sounds like the opening to a Lifetime movie. Usually not the good kind. I know it sounds weird, but Rosalind, weird doesn't even begin to cover it. You save a guy's life and 12 hours later he's offering you a dream job. Either he's genuinely grateful or he's trying to buy your silence about something." Silence about what? I don't know. Maybe the fact that his medical records were screwed up. Maybe he's worried about liability. Maybe he wants to make sure you don't talk to the press about how doctors ignored you. That seems paranoid. It's not paranoid if they're actually out to get you. Rich people don't throw money around for no reason, Ross. There's always an angle. Rosalind sighed. Deepa had a point. "So you think I should turn it down?" "I think you should investigate. Look into this institute. Talk to people who've worked with Thornburg before. Do your due diligence before you commit to anything. And maybe get a lawyer to review whatever contract they send you." "I can't afford a lawyer." "Then find one who does pro bono work. Or ask someone who knows contract law. Just don't sign anything without understanding exactly what you're agreeing to." After they hung up, Rosalind spent the next several hours researching. She read articles about Callum Thornburg. There were hundreds. He'd made his fortune in biotech, investing early in companies that developed breakthrough medications and medical devices. He was known for being demanding, visionary, and occasionally ruthless in business dealings. But he was also known for his philanthropic work. He'd funded medical research facilities, donated to hospitals, established scholarships for underprivileged students pursuing healthcare careers. The press generally painted him as a complicated figure, brilliant but difficult, generous but exacting. She found interviews with people who'd worked for him. The reviews were mixed. "Best boss I ever had. He expects excellence, but he also empowers you to achieve it. Nightmare to work for. Everything is urgent. Everything is critical. You're never doing enough. He changed my career. Gave me opportunities I never would have had elsewhere. I burned out after 2 years. The pace was unsustainable. So basically, Thornburg was intense. Was she prepared for intense? She thought about her current job. The night shifts, the dismissive doctors, the bureaucracy that made it nearly impossible to implement even simple improvements. The student loans piling up as she crawled through medical school, one class at a time. Intense might be an improvement. The next night at work, Rosalind found herself the subject of uncomfortable attention. Word had spread about Thornburg's offer. How, she didn't know, but hospital gossip travelled at the speed of light. Dr. Wickham was notably colder toward her. He didn't address her directly all shift, communicating through intermediaries when he needed something from nursing staff. The other nurses were split. Some were supportive. "Go for it, Ros. You deserve recognition." Others were envious. "Must be nice to have a billionaire sugar daddy." And still others were openly hostile. "She thinks she's too good for us now." Patricia Montenegro pulled her aside around midnight. "Rosalind, I need to know. Are you leaving?" "I haven't decided. Be honest with me. Are you seriously considering Thornburg's offer?" "Yes." "I'm considering it." "Why?" Patricia looked uncomfortable. "Because if you are, I need to know sooner rather than later. Replacing a good nurse takes time, and training someone to your level of competency takes even longer. I'm not trying to pressure you, but I do need to plan. I understand. I'll let you know within the week. That's all I ask. Patricia paused. For what it's worth, I think you should take it. This place doesn't appreciate you the way you deserve. Maybe Thornburg's Institute will. Coming from Patricia, who rarely gave compliments, that meant something. The shift was busier than usual, which helped Rosalind avoid dwelling on her decision. She had 3 post-surgical patients who needed constant monitoring, one elderly patient experiencing complications from pneumonia, and the usual assortment of ICU crises that made time disappear. At 4 a.m., during a brief lull, Rosalind was reviewing patient charts when she noticed something odd. Mr. Okafor in room 410, the patient who'd been sleeping peacefully during Thornburg's code, had developed an irregular heartbeat. Nothing immediately life-threatening, but concerning. She pulled up his full chart and started cross-referencing his medications. Something wasn't right. The combination of drugs he was on shouldn't cause this particular arrhythmia, unless... Rosalind grabbed a reference manual and started checking. 20 minutes later, she'd found it. A drug interaction that was rare, but documented. 2 of his medications, when combined with a third he'd been prescribed just that morning, created a synergistic effect that could cause exactly the arrhythmia he was now experiencing. She paged the resident on call, Dr. Torres, a second-year who was competent but overworked. "What's the problem, Chen?" Rosalind explained the drug interaction. Dr. Torres reviewed the chart, ran the combinations through the hospital's drug interaction software, and confirmed what Rosalind had found. "Good catch," Torres said. "I'll adjust his medications. This could have gotten serious if it had gone on much longer." Just doing my job. But as Torres walked away, Rosalind felt a familiar frustration. This was what she did. Caught problems. Others missed, prevented complications before they became critical. And nobody noticed, nobody cared. It was just expected. At Thornburg's Institute, would it be different? Would thoroughness be celebrated rather than expected, or was she being naive? She thought about her mother, who'd worked as a cafeteria worker at a hospital for 30 years. Who'd cleaned tables and served food and been invisible to doctors and nurses and patients alike, who'd come home exhausted every night, barely making enough money to keep the family afloat. "You're smart, Rosalind," her mother used to say. "You can do more than this. Don't end up like me, working hard for people who don't even see you." Rosalind had become a nurse to help people, but also to be seen, to matter, to have her contributions recognized. She'd succeeded at helping people. The recognition part? Still working on that. Maybe Thornburg's offer was her chance. By the end of her shift, she'd made a decision. She'd call Felix Carrington and accept. She'd take the leap. She'd trust that this opportunity was real, and that, whatever complications came with it, she could handle them. But first, she needed to do one more thing. She waited until 8 a.m. when the day shift attending arrived for rounds. Dr. Elena Voss was in her 60s, a veteran physician who'd seen every kind of hospital drama and had earned respect through decades of competent, compassionate care. "Dr. Voss, do you have a moment?" "Of course, Rosalind. What do you need?" "I wanted to let you know I'm going to be leaving Sacred Heart. I've accepted a position elsewhere." Dr. Voss's expression shifted. Surprise, then understanding, then something that might have been sadness. "The Thornburg Institute?" "Yes. I can't say I'm surprised. You've always been too good for this place. We've been lucky to have you as long as we did." "Thank you. That means a lot coming from you." Can I offer you some advice as someone who's worked with powerful people before? Please. Callum Thornburg is brilliant and generous, but he's also complicated. He'll push you harder than anyone ever has. He'll expect more than you think you can give. And if you disappoint him, if you fail to meet his standards, he won't hesitate to let you go. So you think I'm making a mistake? No. I think you're making a bold choice. Bold choices come with risk, but they also come with reward. Just go in with your eyes open. Don't mistake gratitude for loyalty. Thornburg is grateful now because you saved his life. But gratitude fades. Make sure you prove your value beyond that single act, or you'll find yourself replaced as quickly as you were hired. The words were sobering but fair. Thank you, Dr. Voss. I'll remember that. Good luck, Rosalind. You're going to need it. Rosalind went home, pulled out Felix Carrington's business card, and made the call. Felix Carrington. Mr. Carrington, this is Rosalind Chen. I'm calling about Mr. Thornburg's offer. Excellent. I've been hoping to hear from you. Have you made a decision? Yes. I'd like to accept. There was genuine pleasure in Felix's voice. That's wonderful news. Callum will be thrilled. I'll have our HR department. We can provide one to explain the contract terms if you'd like. Completely independent. We want you to understand exactly what you're agreeing to. That would be helpful. Thank you. One more thing. Callum would like to meet with you again before you start. Nothing formal. Just dinner once he's discharged. Would you be available? Dinner? He likes to get to know his key employees personally. It's important to him that the people who work for him understand his vision for the Institute. Okay, yes, I can do dinner. Perfect. I'll be in touch with details. Welcome to the team, Rosalind. She hung up and sat in her apartment, staring at her phone. She'd just changed her entire life with a single phone call. She should feel excited, relieved, triumphant. Instead, she felt terrified. What had she just agreed to? The dinner was scheduled for Friday evening at Thornburg's penthouse. Not a restaurant, because Callum was still recovering and didn't want to deal with public attention. Felix had sent a car for her, a sleek black sedan with a professional driver who said exactly 4 words during the entire ride. "Good evening, Ms. Chen." Rosalind had agonized over what to wear. Too casual, and she'd seem unprofessional. Too formal, and she'd seem like she was trying too hard. She'd finally settled on a simple navy dress and modest jewelry. Professional, but not stuffy. The car pulled up to one of the city's most exclusive residential towers. The kind of building where the cheapest unit probably cost more than Rosalind would make in her entire lifetime. A doorman greeted her by name. Felix must have called ahead, and escorted her to a private elevator that required a key card to operate. The elevator opened directly into Thornburg's penthouse. No hallway, no shared space. The elevator was the entrance. Felix was waiting. "Rosalind, thank you for coming. Callum is on a call, but should be finished shortly. Can I get you something to drink? Wine, water?" "Water is fine." The penthouse was stunning in an understated way. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. Modern furniture that looked comfortable despite its geometric severity. Original artwork on the walls, not reproductions, but actual paintings that probably cost 6 figures each. But what caught Rosalind's attention was the medical equipment discreetly positioned throughout the space. A blood pressure monitor on a side table, pill organizers on the kitchen counter, a wheelchair folded in the corner. Reminders that Thornburg, despite his wealth, was still a patient recovering from a serious medical event. "Sorry to keep you waiting." Callum emerged from what must have been his home office, looking better than he had at the hospital, but still somewhat fragile. He moved carefully, like someone aware of their body's limits. "That call ran longer than expected. Investors can be needy. Please, sit. Let's talk. They settled in the living area. Felix brought water for Rosalind and what looked like herbal tea for Callum, then discreetly withdrew. "How are you feeling?" Rosalind asked. "You look better, but you should still be taking it easy." Spoken like a nurse. "I'm fine. Frustrated by the limitations, but fine. My doctors want me to rest for another month before returning to full activities. I'm negotiating them down to 2 weeks. You should listen to your doctors. I rarely listen to anyone. It's both my greatest strength and my fatal flaw." Callum smiled slightly. "But I did want to talk with you about the Institute before you officially start. I realize I made you a significant offer very quickly, and you accepted without much information. So let me fill in some details." He pulled up a presentation on a nearby tablet and projected it onto the wall. Images of the Institute appeared. Architectural renderings, floor plans, equipment specifications. The Thornburg Advanced Care Institute will focus on complex diagnostic cases. The kind of patients who've been through multiple hospitals, seen dozens of specialists, and still don't have answers. We'll use cutting-edge technology combined with old-fashioned thoroughness, the kind you demonstrated when you caught my missing medical records. That's an admirable mission. It's also personal. I've been dealing with mysterious health issues for 2 years. Specialists at the best hospitals couldn't figure out what was wrong. The pacemaker malfunction was just one symptom of a larger problem. And you know what I learned going through that process? What? That modern medicine is simultaneously incredibly advanced and deeply flawed. We have amazing technology, brilliant doctors, sophisticated treatments. But the system is rushed. Doctors see too many patients. Nurses are overworked. Medical records are a disaster. Important information gets lost in the cracks. And patients, especially complicated patients, fall through. Rosalind nodded. She'd seen this herself countless times. "So I'm building something different," Callum continued. "A place where staff has time to be thorough, where nurses have the authority to speak up without being dismissed, where every person on the team, from physicians to environmental services, is valued for their contribution." It's idealistic, maybe. But I have the resources to make it happen, and you want me to lead the nursing division. I want you to help build it from the ground up. You'll have input on everything: hiring, protocols, culture, equipment. You know what works and what doesn't in hospital nursing. I want you to design something better. It sounded incredible. It also sounded like an enormous amount of pressure. "Can I ask you something?" Rosalind said. "Well, why me? You could hire nurse executives with decades of experience, people who've built entire departments. Why offer this to someone with my limited administrative experience?" Callum was quiet for a moment. "Do you know what I've learned building companies for 30 years? Credentials matter less than competence. Experience matters less than judgment. I've hired dozens of executives with impressive resumes who turned out to be mediocre. And I've hired people straight out of school who turned into superstars. You demonstrated judgment under pressure. You saw a problem, tried to address it through proper channels, and when that failed, you didn't give up. You kept the information ready just in case. That's exactly the kind of thinking I need. I could still fail. I've never run anything this large. You might. But I'd rather hire someone with your instincts and teach them management than hire an experienced manager without instincts. Skills can be learned. Character can't. Dinner arrived, catered, brought in by white-gloved servers who appeared and disappeared like ghosts. The food was exquisite. Seared fish, roasted vegetables, risotto that tasted like it had been crafted by someone who considered cooking an art form. They ate and talked. Callum asked about her background, her family, her path to nursing, her decision to pursue medical school. He listened with genuine interest, asking follow-up questions that suggested he actually cared about the answers, rather than just making polite conversation. "My mother was a cafeteria worker," Rosalind found herself saying. "At a hospital. She spent 30 years serving food to people who never learned her name. She wanted more for me. She died 3 years ago, cancer, but not before she saw me graduate nursing school. She was proud. She should have been. You honor her memory with your work." Something about his tone made Rosalind look at him more carefully. "You lost someone too." "Someone important," Callum nodded slowly. "My wife, Miranda, 7 years ago. Ovarian cancer. By the time they caught it, it was stage 4. She fought for 2 years, but..." He trailed off. "The medical system failed her. Symptoms were dismissed. Tests were delayed. By the time someone took her seriously, it was too late. That's part of why I'm building this institute, so other people don't lose someone because doctors were too busy to listen. I'm sorry for your loss. So am I, every single day." He set down his fork. "Felix warned me not to tell you that. Said it might make you uncomfortable, knowing that my motivation is personal rather than purely philanthropic." "It doesn't make me uncomfortable. It makes the mission more meaningful. You're not building this because it's a good investment. You're building it because it matters." "Exactly." Callum smiled, genuinely this time, not the polite social smile, but something real. "You get it. Some people don't. They think everything I do is about money, or recognition, or building a legacy. But this is about making sure no one else goes through what Miranda went through, what I went through watching her suffer." They talked for another hour, about medicine, about the challenges of healthcare, about their hopes for what the Institute could become. By the time Rosalind left, she felt something she hadn't expected. Connection. Not romantic. Callum was still grieving his wife, and this was purely professional, but real human connection with someone who understood the frustration of watching a broken system fail people who deserved better. The car drove her home. She climbed the stairs to her apartment feeling energized and terrified in equal measure. She'd committed to something enormous, something that could either be the best decision. Rosalind's remaining 2 weeks at Sacred Heart was strange. She worked her shifts, knowing each one brought her closer to leaving. Some colleagues were supportive, others were openly resentful. Dr. Wickham avoided her entirely. On her last shift, Patricia Montenegro pulled her aside. "I'm not going to lie, I'm losing one of my best nurses. But I'm happy for you. Go do something great, Rosalind. Show them what you're capable of. Thank you, Patricia, for everything. And Rosalind, don't lose yourself in this new opportunity. Callum Thornburg is impressive, but he's also intense. Make sure you maintain boundaries. Make sure you take care of yourself." It was good advice that Rosalind would remember later, when boundaries became harder to maintain. Her first day at the Thornburg Advanced Care Institute was surreal. The building was still under construction, so the initial team was working out of a temporary office space in a nearby building. The staff was small, just 15 people so far, but every single one of them was accomplished. Physicians from top programs, nurses with impressive credentials, researchers with published work in major journals, and Rosalind, the floor nurse who'd caught a missing medical record. She felt like an imposter. "Don't," Felix said when he caught her looking overwhelmed during the morning orientation. "Don't doubt yourself. You're here because you earned it. Callum doesn't make hiring mistakes. Everyone here has done so much more than me. Everyone here has impressive credentials. You have impressive judgment. There's a difference." The first weeks were a whirlwind of meetings, planning sessions, and design charrettes. Rosalind was involved in everything, deciding on nurse-to-patient ratios, designing workflow protocols, selecting medical equipment, creating communication systems. It was exhilarating and exhausting. She worked 12-hour days, came home mentally drained, and dreamed about patient care algorithms. Callum was present for most major decisions, despite his doctor's orders to rest. He pushed everyone, including himself. In meetings, he'd challenge assumptions, demand evidence for assertions, and refuse to accept "that's how it's always been done" as justification for anything. If we're building something new, he'd say, then everything is up for question. Every protocol, every hierarchy, every tradition. If it serves patients well, we keep it. If it doesn't, we change it. No sacred cows. It was liberating. It was also terrifying. Creating systems from scratch meant there was no template to follow, no established best practices to rely on. Everything was an experiment. 3 months in, Rosalind noticed something concerning. Callum looked worse than when she'd started. He was thinner, more fatigued, occasionally short of breath. During one meeting, he'd had to leave abruptly, returning 20 minutes later looking pale and sweaty. "Are you seeing your doctors regularly?" she asked him after the meeting when everyone else had left. "I'm fine. That's not what I asked. Nurse Chen, I appreciate your concern, but Callum." She used his first name deliberately. "I've seen what ignoring symptoms looks like. Your wife died because doctors didn't take her seriously early enough. Don't make the same mistake yourself." His expression darkened. "That's a low blow. It's the truth. You're symptomatic. You're getting worse. When was your last full workup?" He was quiet for a long moment. 6 weeks ago. They said my levels were concerning, but not critical. Wanted me to come back in a month. I've been too busy. Make the appointment today or I will. You're not my nurse. I'm your employee, which means I have a vested interest in your health. If you collapse, this entire institute collapses with you. So yes, I'm invested. Make the appointment." He stared at her, and for a moment she thought she'd overstepped. Thought he'd tell her to mind her own business or worse, terminate her employment. Instead, he laughed, a genuine, surprised laugh. "You don't back down, do you?" "Not when it matters. Fine, I'll call my cardiologist today. Happy?" "I'll be happy when I see the appointment confirmation." He shook his head, still smiling slightly. "You're bossy for someone who works for me. You hired me for my judgment. I'm exercising it. Fair enough." He made the appointment, Rosalind checked, and went in for a full cardiac workup 2 days later. The results were concerning enough that his doctors ordered additional tests. An echocardiogram, a cardiac MRI, blood work, genetic testing. A week later, Callum called an emergency meeting with the senior staff. He looked grim. "I'm going to be direct because that's how I operate," he said without preamble. "My recent testing revealed a genetic condition I inherited from my mother. Hypertrophic cardiomyopathy. It's a progressive disease. It's what caused my heart issues, including the pacemaker malfunction. And it's getting worse." The room was silent. "Treatment options are limited. Medications can manage symptoms, but can't stop progression. Eventually I'll need a heart transplant. Without one, my doctors give me 2 to 3 years." Someone gasped. Felix looked like he might be sick. Rosalind felt like the floor had dropped out from under her. "I'm telling you this because you deserve to know. The Institute is my legacy project. I intend to see it through to completion, even if that means I'm doing some of it from a hospital bed. I'm also making contingency plans, ensuring the Institute will continue after I'm gone. Felix will take over as executive director. The board will maintain my vision. Everything we're building will survive even if I don't." He looked directly at Rosalind. "And yes, before you ask, I'm following all my doctor's recommendations. I'm on the transplant list. I'm doing everything right, but I'm also a realist. This disease doesn't have a good prognosis. After the meeting, people dispersed in shocked silence. Rosalind found Callum in his office, staring out the window at the construction site where the permanent institute building was taking shape. "You knew something was wrong," she said, "when you made me the job offer. You already suspected. I knew something was off. I didn't know it was this serious. Does that change anything? About the timeline? About your plans? It means we move faster. The building opens in 15 months. I intend to see patients in that facility before I—" He stopped. "I need to see it work. I need to know Miranda's death meant something. It did mean something. This institute exists because of her. That matters, whether you're here to see it or not. Intellectually, I know that. Emotionally, I need to see it with my own eyes." Rosalind sat in the chair across from his desk. "Then we'll make sure you do. We'll move mountains if we have to. You'll see patients in that building. You'll see your vision become reality. That's a big promise. Then I guess I better keep it." For the next year, the team worked at a pace that was barely sustainable. The construction accelerated. The hiring intensified. The systems were refined and tested and refined again. Callum pushed everyone relentlessly, but he pushed himself hardest of all. And slowly, impossibly, the institute took shape. 14 months after Rosalind's first day, the Thornburg Advanced Care Institute officially opened its doors to patients. The building was beautiful, modern but warm, with natural light flooding through carefully positioned windows. Private patient rooms that felt more like hotel suites than hospital spaces, and technology integrated so seamlessly it almost disappeared. The staff had grown to over 200 people. Rosalind's nursing department alone had 45 nurses, all hand-picked, all trained in the Institute's philosophy of collaborative, thorough care. Callum had deteriorated visibly over that year. He was on oxygen intermittently now, his energy flagging by mid-afternoon. But he was still present, still making decisions, still driving everyone toward his vision of what healthcare could be. The first patient was a woman named Elena Ruiz, 53 years old, who'd been experiencing symptoms for 5 years without a diagnosis. Chronic pain, fatigue, cognitive issues. She'd been through 6 different hospitals, seen dozens of specialists, and been told everything from "it's all in your head" to "learn to live with it." Rosalind was assigned as Helena's primary nurse. Over 3 days, she documented every symptom, every timeline detail, every medication trial. She coordinated testing, comprehensive panels that looked at everything from autoimmune markers to environmental exposures to rare genetic conditions. On day 4, the team had a diagnosis, a rare form of vasculitis that had been missed because it didn't present in the typical pattern. It was treatable, not curable, but manageable with the right medications, Elena cried when they told her. "Someone finally believes me. Someone finally figured it out." Callum was there for the diagnosis conference. He shook Helena's hand and said, "This is what we built this place for. So people like you don't suffer for years without answers." After Helena left, Callum pulled Rosalind aside. "Good work. That's exactly what I envisioned. Thoroughness, collaboration, persistence. You're doing what I hoped you would. It's the team. Everyone contributed, led by you. Don't diminish your role." Over the next 3 months, the Institute took on increasingly complex cases. Patients came from across the country, desperate for answers that traditional hospitals hadn't provided. The success rate was remarkable. Over 70% of patients received definitive diagnoses, and nearly 80% had their quality of life significantly improved. The medical community took notice. Articles appeared in journals. News segments featured the Institute. Callum did interviews, though he looked frailer with each appearance. "You should rest more," Rosalind told him after one particularly grueling day. "I'll rest when I'm dead, which according to my doctors might be soon. Callum, I'm still on the transplant list, but my condition has deteriorated enough that I've moved up in priority. Which sounds good until you remember it means I'm getting sicker. Are you scared?" The question surprised him. No one asked Callum Thornburg if he was scared. People asked for his time, his money, his expertise, but not his feelings. Terrified, he admitted. Not of dying exactly, but of not finishing what I started. Of this place failing without me here to protect it. It won't fail. We've built something strong, something that will outlast any one person. I hope you're right. One morning, Rosalind arrived to find the Institute in controlled chaos. Callum had collapsed at home and been rushed to the emergency room. He was in heart failure, critical condition. He needed a transplant immediately, or he wouldn't survive the week. Felix pulled Rosalind aside. "He's been asking for you. He wants to make sure you understand something." "What?" "That no matter what happens to him, the Institute continues. That you don't give up on the mission just because he's not here. I won't. Promise him that. He needs to hear it." Rosalind went to the hospital, not Sacred Heart, ironically, but the university hospital across town. She found Callum in the ICU, connected to machines that were keeping his failing heart working. He looked terrible, smaller somehow, as if the disease was consuming him from the inside. "You look like hell," she said, pulling up a chair beside his bed. "You should see the other guy." His voice was weak, but his humor intact. "Felix talked to you?" "He did, and yes, I promise. The Institute continues. We'll honor your vision. We'll treat patients the way you intended. We won't let this fail." "Good, because if you do, I'll haunt you. I'll be the world's most annoying ghost." "I don't doubt it." They sat in comfortable silence for a few minutes. Then Callum said, "I need to tell you something about why I really hired you. You told me already. I demonstrated good judgment, that's part of it. But there's more. When I was coding, when I was clinically dead for those 8 minutes, I experienced something. Not a near-death experience exactly, but clarity about what mattered, about who mattered." "Callum, you don't have to let me finish." "I realized in that moment that I'd spent my entire life surrounding myself with impressive people, credentials, accomplishments, people who looked good on paper. And most of them didn't give a damn about me as a person. They cared about my money, my influence, what I could do for them. That's not. But you cared whether I lived or died, even before you knew who I was. You saw a patient in distress, and you fought to help him. Not for recognition, not for reward, just because it was the right thing to do. And when I woke up, when I learned what you'd done, I thought, that's who I want around me. People who care about doing right, not looking good." Rosalind felt tears burning behind her eyes. "I'm glad I could help. I'm glad you survived. Me too. Though I'm not sure for how much longer." He smiled weakly. "But I got to see the Institute open. I got to see patients helped. I got to see the team we built actually work. That's more than I expected. You're not done yet. You're on the transplant list. A heart could come through any day, or it won't, and I've made my peace with that. I got to do something meaningful with the time I had. That's all anyone can ask for." The heart came 3 days later. A compatible match from a trauma victim in another state? The transplant surgery took 11 hours. The entire Institute staff gathered in the waiting room, watching the clock, trading coffee and nervous energy. Rosalind didn't pray. She'd never been particularly religious, but she found herself making deals with the universe. Let him live. Let the surgery work. Let him see the fruits of everything he built. At 2 a.m., the surgeon emerged. Everyone stood. The transplant was successful. Mr. Thornburg is stable. He'll need weeks of recovery and months of careful management, but barring complications, he should make a full recovery. The room erupted in cheers. People hugged. Someone cried. Felix looked like he'd aged a decade in the past week, but now his face showed something like hope. Rosalind slipped away from the celebration and found a quiet corridor. She sat on a bench and let herself cry. From relief, from exhaustion, from the emotional toll of the past months. There you are. Felix found her, looking equally drained. He's asking for you. Not immediately, he's in recovery. But when he's awake and cleared for visitors, he wants you to be the first person he sees. Why, me? Because you gave him a second chance. And now he gets a third. I just hope he uses it well. Oh, he will. You know Callum. He'll be back to pushing everyone within a week. We'll all be exhausted again. Callum's recovery was long and complicated. Transplant patients faced a lifetime of immunosuppression, constant monitoring, and the ever-present risk of rejection. But Callum was stubborn. He fought through every setback, pushed through every complication, and 6 months after the transplant, he was back at the Institute part-time. He looked different, thinner, older, marked by the ordeal. But his mind was as sharp as ever, and his determination had only intensified. "I have a second chance," he told the staff at his first meeting back. "Not many people get that. I intend to make it count." The Institute continued to grow. More patients, more successes, more recognition in the medical community. Rosalind had been promoted to Chief Nursing Officer, overseeing not just the nursing staff, but helping shape policy for patient care across all departments. She'd also finished her medical degree, the transition from nurse to physician that she'd been working toward for years. Dr. Rosalind Chen. It had a nice ring to it. One afternoon, almost 2 years after the Institute's opening, Callum asked Rosalind to meet him in his office. "I have something to show you," he said, pulling up a presentation on his computer. It was a proposal for a second institute. Same model, same philosophy, but in a different city. Then a third. Eventually, a network of Thornburg Advanced Care Institutes across the country. "You want to expand?" Rosalind asked. "I want to scale the model. We've proven it works here. Imagine if we could replicate it everywhere. Imagine how many patients could be helped. That's ambitious and expensive. I have the money. I have the motivation. What I need is the right leadership." He looked at her directly. "I want you to run it. The whole network. I'll provide the funding and the vision, but you'll handle the implementation." Rosalind was stunned. "Callum, I just became a physician. I don't have the experience to—" "You have exactly the experience I need. You've built this place from the ground up. You understand the mission. You have the judgment to make hard decisions. You care about doing right, not looking good. That's worth more than decades of traditional experience. I don't know what to say. Say yes. Say you'll help me turn this one institute into a movement. Say you'll help change healthcare for the better." Rosalind thought about her mother, serving food to people who never saw her. About herself, sitting at a nurse's station, being ignored while doctors missed critical information. About Helena Ruiz, crying with relief when someone finally believed her. About every patient who'd been dismissed, overlooked, or failed by a broken system. "Yes," she said, "I'll do it." Over the next 5 years, the network grew. 5 institutes, then 10, then 15, each one built on the same principles: thoroughness, collaboration, empowerment of all staff, and absolute commitment to finding answers for complicated patients. Rosalind traveled constantly, overseeing construction, hiring staff, training teams. It was exhausting but exhilarating. Every new institute meant hundreds more patients who'd finally get the care they deserved. Callum was still involved, though his health remained fragile. He'd had 2 rejection episodes that required aggressive treatment. His doctors warned him to slow down, but slowing down wasn't in his nature. "I'm living on borrowed time," he told Rosalind during one of their weekly check-ins. "Transplants don't last forever. I probably have 10 years, maybe 15 if I'm lucky. I want to use every minute I have left. You've already done more than most people accomplish in a lifetime. It's not enough. It's never enough. Every patient we help is wonderful, but I think about all the ones we're not reaching. All the people still suffering because they can't get to one of our institutes. It keeps me up at night. You can't save everyone, Callum. I know. But I have to try." One morning, Rosalind got a call from Felix. His voice was shaking. Callum collapsed during a board meeting. "He's back in the hospital. They think it's rejection. A bad one." Rosalind caught the next flight to corporate headquarters. When she arrived at the hospital, the prognosis was grim. Callum's body was rejecting the transplanted heart aggressively. They tried every intervention, every medication. Nothing was working. "He's not going to make it," Felix said bluntly. "His doctors give him days, maybe a week." Rosalind went to Callum's bedside. He was awake but struggling to breathe even with oxygen support. He looked at her and managed a weak smile. "Hey, Doc, you look worried." "I am worried. You're dying." "Very direct. I appreciate that." He coughed, wincing with pain. "How many institutes are open?" 18. 3 more under construction. That's not bad. Not bad at all." He closed his eyes for a moment. "Promise me something. Anything. Keep going. Build the full network. 50 institutes. 100. Whatever it takes. Don't let my death be the end of this mission. It won't be. And take care of the team. Everyone we've hired. Everyone who believed in this vision. Make sure they're okay." "I will." "Good. Then I can rest easy." He opened his eyes again. "I need to tell you something. Something I've never told anyone." "What?" "The night I coded, when you saved my life, I was conscious for part of it. I heard you arguing with Dr. Wickham. I heard you telling him about the pacemaker, heard him dismiss you, heard you refusing to give up. And I remember thinking, whoever this person is, they care more about saving my life than protecting their ego. That's rare. That's special. I was just doing my job. You were doing more than your job. You were fighting for someone you didn't even know. That's why I hired you. Not just because you were competent, but because you had heart. And you've proven me right every single day since then. Thank you, Callum. For the opportunity, for the trust, for building something that matters. Thank you for helping me build it." He struggled to breathe for a moment. "One more thing. After I'm gone, open my safe. The code is in your personnel file. Inside is a letter, instructions. Read it carefully. Callum, promise me you'll read it." "I promise." He died 3 days later. The entire medical community mourned. News coverage was extensive. Tributes poured in from patients whose lives had been changed, from staff who'd been inspired by his vision, from medical professionals who recognized his impact on healthcare. Rosalind spoke at his memorial service, fighting back tears as she described the man who'd taken a chance on a floor nurse nobody listened to. "Callum Thornburg saved my life," she said. "Not in the dramatic way I saved his, with code blues and medical intervention, but in a deeper way. He saw potential in me that I didn't see in myself. He gave me opportunities I never could have earned through traditional channels. He taught me that credentials matter less than character, and that sometimes the most important thing you can do is believe in someone. After the service, after the reception, after all the mourners had gone home, Rosalind returned to the Institute headquarters. She went to Callum's office, now empty, stripped of his personal items, and opened his safe using the code from her personnel file. Inside was a letter, as promised, and something else, legal documents, a lot of them. She opened the letter first. "Dear Rosalind, if you're reading this, then I'm dead, and you've kept your promise to check the safe. I hope my memorial service wasn't too tedious. I specifically requested no bagpipes, but knowing Felix, he probably included them anyway. The documents in this safe transfer majority ownership of the Thornburg Advanced Care Institute network to you. All 18 existing institutes, the 3 under construction, and the funding for future expansion. It's all yours now. Before you panic, because I know you're panicking, understand my reasoning. I've spent my life building companies and making money. It's easy. You identify opportunities, take calculated risks, and let compound returns do the rest. Building the institutes was different. This was about mission, not profit. About legacy, not returns. And I realized something important. The person best suited to lead this mission isn't the person with the most business experience or the biggest bank account. It's the person who cares most about patients, who fights for people even when it's inconvenient, who sees beyond credentials to actual competence. That person is you. Yes, you're younger than traditional executives. Yes, you'll face skepticism. Yes, some people will question whether you're ready for this responsibility. Ignore them. You've been leading this network since the day I hired you. Now you just have it on paper. The funding is secure, endowments, investment income, ongoing donations. You'll never have to worry about resources. Just focus on the mission, building institutes, helping patients, changing healthcare, one difficult case at a time. I have one request. Don't let this destroy your life the way I let it consume mine. Make time for friends, family, relationships. Don't sacrifice everything for the mission. Miranda would want me to tell you that. She always said I needed better work-life balance. I never listened. Learn from my mistakes. Thank you for giving me a second chance at life and for helping me use that time to build something meaningful. I'm grateful every day that you walked into that ICU 3 years ago and refused to stay silent. With deep respect and gratitude, Callum P.S. Felix knows about this arrangement. He'll help you navigate the transition. Don't let him work too hard either. He needs a vacation. Rosalind read the letter 3 times, then carefully reviewed the legal documents. It was all real. Callum had left her control of his life's work. She should have felt honored, grateful, excited. Instead, she felt terrified. What if she failed? What if she couldn't live up to Callum's vision? What if she let down all the patients depending on these institutes? But then she remembered something Callum had said months ago. The best leaders aren't the ones who never doubt themselves. They're the ones who doubt themselves but keep going anyway. She'd keep going. For Callum. For Miranda, for her mother, for every patient who'd ever been ignored or dismissed or failed by the system. She'd build 50 institutes, 100, whatever it took, because someone had to, and apparently that someone was her 5 years after Callum's death. The Thornburg Advanced Care Institute network had grown to 47 facilities across the United States. Each one operated on the principles Callum had established: thorough care, collaborative decision-making, empowerment of all staff levels, and absolute commitment to finding answers for complex cases. Rosalind had transformed from an ignored floor nurse to one of the most influential figures in American healthcare. She'd been featured in Time magazine's 100 Most Influential People. Medical journals published articles about the Thornburg model. Healthcare conferences invited her as a keynote speaker, but what mattered most to her wasn't the recognition. It was the patients. Like Samuel Torres, a 12-year-old boy who'd been experiencing symptoms for 3 years and been told by 6 different hospitals that his problems were psychosomatic. The Thornburg Institute in Denver diagnosed him with a rare metabolic disorder and started treatment that dramatically improved his quality of life. Like Natasha Keller, a 47-year-old woman told she had chronic fatigue syndrome and should learn to manage stress. Better. The Thornburg Institute in Atlanta discovered she had an autoimmune condition affecting her nervous system. With proper treatment, she was back to work within 6 months. Like James Whitmore, a 63-year-old veteran whose mysterious symptoms had baffled VA doctors for 5 years. The Thornburg Institute in Phoenix found a rare complication from his military service: exposure to toxic chemicals that had caused progressive neurological damage. They couldn't cure it, but they could slow its progression and significantly improve his symptoms. Every success story reminded Rosalind why this work mattered, why Callum had poured his fortune into building these facilities, why she'd given up a simpler life to lead this network. On the 5-year anniversary of Callum's death, Rosalind stood in the lobby of the flagship institute, the original building where it had all started. A memorial had been installed, a bronze statue of Callum, looking healthy and vigorous, with an inscription, "In memory of Callum Thornburg, who believed that every patient deserves to be heard and every medical professional deserves to be empowered to help." Beside it was a second, smaller plaque that Rosalind had commissioned. It read, "In memory of Miranda Thornburg, whose suffering inspired a revolution in diagnostic medicine." "Still miss him." Felix appeared beside her. He'd stayed on as COO, helping Rosalind navigate the complexities of running a massive healthcare network. Every day, he was difficult, demanding, sometimes impossible to work with. But he had vision, and he trusted me when no one else did. He had good judgment. "You've exceeded every expectation. We exceeded them. This is a team effort, always so humble. Callum was right about you. You care more about the mission than about recognition." They stood in comfortable silence for a moment, watching staff and patients move through the lobby. The institute was busy, always busy. There was no shortage of complicated cases, no shortage of patients who'd been failed by traditional medicine. "I got a call from the governor yesterday," Felix said. "She wants to model the state's new diagnostic centers on the Thornburg system. Wants you to consult on the design. We're already stretched thin. I'm not sure we have bandwidth for consulting. We'll make bandwidth." This is exactly what Callum wanted, the model spreading beyond our own facilities. If we can influence how other hospitals approach complex cases, we multiply our impact. "I'll think about it." Her phone buzzed. A text from one of the institute directors, "Patient in critical condition. Unusual presentation. Could use your eyes on this case." "Duty calls," Rosalind said. "Go, I'll handle the administrative stuff." Rosalind headed toward the clinical wing. Even as chief executive officer of the entire network, she still saw patients when time allowed. She'd completed her residency in internal medicine while building the network, barely sleeping, constantly traveling, somehow managing to do both. Now she was a board-certified physician who also happened to run 47 hospitals. The patient was a 19-year-old woman named Zara Hassan. According to her chart, she'd been experiencing symptoms for 6 months: fatigue, joint pain, cognitive issues. 3 previous hospitals had suggested fibromyalgia, chronic fatigue syndrome, or psychological causes. Rosalind reviewed the chart thoroughly, then went to examine Zara personally. She asked detailed questions, documented every symptom, requested comprehensive testing. 4 days later, they had a diagnosis: a rare autoimmune condition that was eminently treatable but almost always missed because it didn't present in the typical pattern. When Rosalind explained the diagnosis and treatment plan, Zara started crying. "Someone finally believes me. Someone finally figured it out." The words were almost identical to what Helena Ruiz had said years ago, the first patient treated at this institute. History repeating itself, but in the best possible way. I believe you, Rosalind said, and we're going to get you better. After the consultation, Rosalind returned to her office. It was late, almost 10 p.m. She should go home, get some sleep, tackle tomorrow's endless meetings and decisions with fresh eyes. Instead, she pulled out the letter Callum had left her. She'd read it hundreds of times over the past 5 years, but it never failed to ground her. Don't let this destroy your life the way I let it consume mine. Make time for friends, family, relationships. She'd tried. Really, she had. But the work was consuming. There was always another facility to open, another crisis to manage, another patient who desperately needed help. How could she walk away when people were depending on her? Her phone rang, a known number, but she answered anyway. Dr. Chen, this is Brittany Fuller. I don't know if you remember me. I was a nurse at Sacred Heart Hospital years ago. I was there the night you saved that billionaire's life. Rosalind did remember. The young nurse holding supplies during Callum's code blue, looking terrified. Of course I remember. How can I help you, Brittany? I need advice. I'm working at a hospital in Ohio, and I noticed something concerning about a patient. But when I brought it to the attending physician, he dismissed me, told me to focus on my nursing duties and let doctors handle diagnosis. And I thought about you, about how you didn't stay quiet even when everyone told you to. And I wondered if you could help me figure out what to do. Rosalind smiled. History repeating itself again. Tell me about the patient, she said. Let's figure this out together. They talked for 40 minutes. Rosalind asked questions, suggested tests, helped Brittany develop a strategy for presenting her concerns in a way that might be taken seriously. By the end of the call, Brittany sounded more confident. Thank you, Dr. Chen. I feel like I can do this now. You can. Trust your instincts. Document everything. And don't give up even if it's hard. The patient is counting on you. After hanging up, Rosalind sat in her office thinking about the journey that had brought her here. From ignored floor nurse to CEO of a revolutionary healthcare network. From someone who couldn't get doctors to listen to someone training an entire generation of healthcare workers to speak up when they noticed problems. She thought about Callum and Miranda and her mother and every patient who'd been dismissed or overlooked or failed by a system that valued credentials over competence, efficiency over thoroughness. And she thought about the future. 47 institutes now, but why stop there? Callum had dreamed of 100, maybe more, as many as it took to ensure that no patient went unheard. No symptom went unexplored. No medical professional was silenced for having good instincts. It was ambitious, maybe impossible. But then again, people had said the same thing about the original institute, about hiring a floor nurse to run the clinical division, about expanding to multiple cities, about changing the fundamental culture of diagnostic medicine, and yet here they were. Rosalind pulled out her laptop and opened the strategic plan for the next 5 years. More institutes, more innovation, more training programs to teach the Thornburg model to healthcare workers across the country. There was so much work to do, but that was okay, because someone had to do it, and once upon a time, she'd been the nurse everyone ignored until she saved a billionaire's life. And he gave her the resources to change everything. Now, she was the doctor everyone listened to because she'd built something too important, too successful, too revolutionary to ignore. Callum had given her a second chance at making a difference. She intended to make it count.